Welcome to the West Tigers Unite podcast. This is our second collaboration episode. I'll introduce the boys in a moment because we've got a slightly changed team tonight. But what's on the agenda is we're going to be talking about Gary Watson's interview with current debenture holder John Hargrove. And the boys are also going to be reacting to two statements from the Holman Barnes Group. One on the 3rd of January, which listed no less than 15 facts, and one last night on the 5th of January in relation to the 3 suspended current board members. And we'll summarise, is there a better way forward for the West Tigers? We don't have Joel Hell, so it might be, slightly offbeat tonight rather than having the professional Joel in charge.
You're not professional, Eddie?
I'll do my best, but with you on board, we'll see. But Rob, it's a pleasure to be on with you. I said to you on the WhatsApp group last night, mate, we've got one thing in common. We've actually got a few because we're West Tigers tragics. We're prone to the odd rant, and we both hate Gary. So that's 3 things in common.
As I said to you last night, we've kissed and made up, so it's all good. Look, as Gary said at the end of the John Hargrove interview yesterday, what West Tigers Unite is about is change for West Tigers, but I'd like to go further than that. It's positive change for the West Tigers. So look, we've put everything behind us now. We can be accused of bias, Gary and I, but we are West Tigers biased. We're not Balmain biased. We're not West Magpies biased. We're just West Tigers biased.
I did like, Eddie, you mentioning that you both hate me like it's some exclusive club. Like it's half the population.
Club, Gary.
It's half the population of Sydney, mate.
It's getting there. And we do have a special guest on tonight, Adrian Tripadina. Adrian has been a member of the West Tigers Life podcast. He's had some robust, hard-hitting comments on that over the past few years. Adrian's also been involved, just a bit of background on him, in some big consortiums and projects, including Qantas, Macquarie Bank, NAB, and Oracle. He's had previous dealings with previous club CEOs in Justin Pascoe and Grant Mayer, and has also previously been a club sponsor. So thank you, Adrian, for giving up your time. Before we get into the weeds of looking at this Holman Barnes, mate, as we sit here 2 months before the start of 2025.
Enthusiasm for the thanks for the intro, by the way. Enthusiasm for the season ahead and the squad.
Go the football side of it.
Yeah. So football side, very enthusiastic. I think I don't think a lot of people outside of the Tigers would have watched Lachlan Galvin last year. And I think if with Jerome, I think attack wise we're gonna be unbelievable. Defense, I don't know. That's the big question. So we'll see.
Does that make you nervous or more excited? Because it's sort of the hope that sort of had this sort of hope for 3 or 4 years. I'm already getting stressed thinking about the prospect of potentially playing off for the final.
Yeah. No, I mean, I remember back when Mitchell Moses started at the club, and Lachlan kind of reminds me of him. I think Lachlan's probably better, even at his age. And even if we weren't winning, I was enjoying watching the youngsters play. And I think having Lachlan there last year, and then I'm really interested to see how he goes with Jerome. We have a good enough team to be, there's so many competitive teams below, say, 5th onwards, that I think it's really going to come down to coaching and question mark. I mean, I don't know. I think points were good. Everything else, we'll see.
Last one on football before we get into it. Do you have full faith in Benji Marshall as a coach? You mentioned it'll come down to coaching. So is that a
TBC? TBC. I don't think anyone can say categorically yes, and I don't think anyone can say categorically no. It's all hypotheticals. I mean, you have to look at last year, and then people tell me, and I don't know this for fact, but that he was coaching most of the times when Tim Sheens was there from very early on. So, but he didn't have the same team he has this year. This is the year. So we'll see. We'll see. I really hope, because I think as a fan, Benji gave us like 10 years of just amazing entertainment to watch. So you can't thank him enough for that. He loves the club. You'd love him to succeed more than anyone in the world. So fingers crossed.
But for me, there's still question marks around the coaching. There's still a lot to be seen. There was some concerning aspects last year, but I don't think anyone can argue about his ability to draw a player. The turnover of the roster we've had this off-season and the players that he's brought in is one of the better off-seasons the West Tigers have ever had. So I don't think we can question his ability to draw a player. Whether he can get the best out of those players now is the question that needs to be answered.
Today, or May, on his first official day there. I think Rob covered it a couple of minutes ago, but we wanted to reiterate sort of the intention of this group. It's obviously a collaboration of different podcast groups and fan groups and social media. And we have launched a petition calling for a review of the governments of the Holman Barnes Group. That petition currently sits at over 1,400 signatures. It's only been up for probably about a week or less than a week. It's a fan-based initiative to help promote change both in the Holman Barnes Group and the West Tigers. This is not something to try and, cause division or Balmain versus West or to get our name in the headlines. It's the opposite.
Yeah, I think it's definitely about trying to bring West Tigers fans together. It's about trying to get a singular voice for West Tigers fans. It's about trying to get change in the ownership group that we thought we had at the end of last year when all the changes were made in the club. It's about trying to set our club up to be a professional modern-day sporting organisation. It's not about where we're from. It's not about I used to be a Balmain supporter, and it's not about other people who used to be a West Magpies supporter. It is about West Tigers wanting what's best for our club, and what's best for our club is governance that sets us up to be a modern sporting organisation.
Seems to be, Rob, a question, I suppose, guys, our age get asked is, are you from the Balmain side or the West side? But the reality is there's a whole generation now that have grown up knowing nothing. Anyone under 35 or 30 probably knows nothing but West Tigers.
Well, that's exactly what John Hardgrove said to Gary yesterday. Look, I think the failure with the West Tigers is we've appeased to both those foundation clubs too much over the last 25 years. There's a difference between respecting West Magpies and Balmain Tigers as opposed to just pandering towards both elements. And let's be clear on something, guys, or this is just an opinion. I really don't know the facts of this. I would say 90% of the West Tigers fans don't care about this stuff. Okay, we've just got the very hardcore Balmain and the very hardcore West fans. And again, even there, I don't mind that, they're annoying, don't get me wrong, especially if you're on social media. But if there's a few Balmain fans and West Magpies fans that are just living in the dark ages, we can live with that. But when it's what we believe to be at Holman Barnes Group board level, that's what concerns me. And that's including the Balmain representative as well. And that's, so I'm not accused of, because I am from the Balmain heritage. Gary Leo said some ridiculously bad things over a month ago. And I don't want to disrespect Gary too, because, he bled, black and gold on the field for Balmain in the late 60s and early 70s as a forward. So, he's obviously Balmain biased because he lived and breathed for Balmain. But we've really got to look at the future. And, we need to get the West Tigers to try and separate as much as they can from the ownership level and make its own decisions. And we all agree on that. When I say we all agree on that, I'd say 90% of us agree on that. But it's scary that the people making the decisions, I believe, don't have that at heart. I feel they're, some of them in particular are wolves in disguise.
Adrian, probably is incredible given the lack of success over a prolonged period of time, the following that the club still has. And obviously, last year was straight wooden spoon, but multiple sellouts at Campbelltown, still big crowds at Leichhardt. And you can just imagine if this team was to get it together and even run mid-table, the sort of crowds that would sort of swell back. Because I'm sure there's some people that are keeping an eye on it who maybe are not going to as many games as they used to.
Yeah, I mean, it's a feel-good club, from all my experiences. And I think as the boys have just said, I think everyone's a little bit jack of. I was really looking forward to coming into this new year just with everything, like especially signing with Terrell May at the end of the year. And then obviously when the directors kind of got removed and all this choppy water sort of started to hit the noise and the papers, I think everyone's just a little bit frustrated. Yeah, people would love for it all to go away, and we're just going to have to see how this plays out now. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there.
Well, let's get just into the nitty-gritty of it, boys. The John Hargrove interview, which Gary did, which is on all the podcast platforms. It was about a 25-minute chat, Gary. I'll just go through a few of the points and then get everyone's reaction to it. But he spoke about the current debenture holder system and how it was set up and protected heritage of the football side. And John was also a Holman Barnes Group board member between 2011 and 2019. He talked about, you mentioned the penalties that were imposed to the 3 West Tigers board members, including the only 2 that were elected by the general membership. He gave his thoughts on the Crawford-Barnier report. I thought that was quite poignant, Gary. He gave you some one-word answers, but they were pretty definitive in saying, yes, he does support the full recommendations of that review. And he talked about some potential changes to that debenture system and how that might set up West Tigers for best possible, with an emphasis on having the right skills required to be on that board. What was a couple of your main takeaways, Gary, from that interview sit down you had with John?
The main things I got out of it, the original reason for the debenture holders, I think is quite valid. It was an important aspect of setting up West Ashfield back in the 1950s. They needed to raise capital to establish the club, so they sold debentures for £50. Now, I think that system has served the club really well in the past, and John said that it served the club really well in the past. I think the fact that the debenture still costs the same price now as what they did in 1955, that it's $100, I think that shows that it's no longer about establishing a club or raising capital for the club. And I think it's done a really good job of protecting the ideals of West Ashfield. And a lot of those ideals focus around football and looking after the West Magpies. The constitution of the Holman Barnes Group still has in it that they're to support the West Magpies, they're to promote football in Western Sydney, and that's in their constitution. And I think for me, that key fact shows why it's crucially important that the West Tigers are able to get independence and are able to operate as their own entity. Because if the Holman Barnes Group, which is the majority owner, doesn't have anything in their constitution about supporting the West Tigers or promoting the West Tigers and is still focused on the West Magpies, and John said that the debenture holders, that's a key part of what they're looking for when they're appointed as well. For me, that kind of shows why we need that independence, because that debenture system's set up to support the Holman Barnes Group and support the Western Suburbs Magpies. I'm not having a go at that system, but that's how it's been set up. And we need a system that supports the West Tigers and promotes the West Tigers and gets the best for the West Tigers.
Rob, your reaction to some of John's takeaways there?
Well, firstly, just congrats to Gary on a really well-handled interview. John, never met him before, but he seemed like an absolute gentleman. There was certainly some stuff, as he said on the podcast, that he didn't want to share publicly. But again, I don't want to be too repetitive because we're all on the same page. But, you know, to use John's words, you know, he said, let West Tigers do their own thing and they need separation. Now, if we got the right people on that West Tigers board that had nothing with Holman Barnes Group except for literally to collect whatever money they get from Holman Barnes, I think that would serve us, you know, in good stead. I think people have to remember too, the fact that John is against the debenture system, the fact that he spoke about the 3 men suspended and how he said those penalties were, in his opinion, not only harsh, but he didn't even deem that they were necessary at all, perhaps. And you got to remember, and it's common knowledge here, we're not breaking ground here. Julie Romero is John's sister-in-law, so it'd be very difficult for him to come out and say these things. And I thought John handled it really, really well. You can see his heart's in the right place. In terms of the dementia system, he said that it's to protect the heritage and culture, of the West, back then West Magpies. And obviously it's grown to the West Tigers. As much as he loves the Magpie, he knows that the West Tigers is the future. So I just think he just seems to be like he knows what he's doing. He's a really good bloke. It's a pity that everyone involved in that dementia system doesn't seem to be like him. But, yeah, I think if someone that close to people at the top of Holman Barnes Group is coming out and politely disagreeing with how things have gone in every way, and especially mentioning that liquor and gaming are looking into Holman Barnes as well, I think we've got a right to be concerned. If I can just quickly backtrack on one point about West Tigers Unite, for me personally anyway, and given what Gary and Joel and yourselves have said, my main reason for getting involved is we wanted those recommendations from last year to happen to a time schedule that we were promised. And Holman Barn Groups are well behind getting all those proposals done. So that's my number one reason we're here. We're not here to run the club or put a gun to the club's head. We just want them to do their job and to do it properly. But yeah, but as for John, he said many things that resonated, but the one thing is that separation and getting West Tigers looking after itself.
Adrian, you've had dealings with people inside the club in the past. Were you surprised or disappointed or shocked at some of the things John said, or was it sort of what you expected?
Well, this is at another level of sort of bureaucracy, because I was dealing with the CEOs of the West Tigers. I wasn't dealing with HBG, and I think that's the thing here. Every team has a different ownership structure, whether it's by members, whether it's private. The problem for the Tigers is it has this kind of, firstly, it has a convoluted merger that's sort of become a little bit more complicated because one side's sort of more dominant now than the other. And then you've got this complicated sort of governance structure within that entity, which is this debenture system. And it seems like, from what John was saying, because there's one thing, I mean, we can talk about what we think about it, but then what the reality of could happen, you know what I mean? They're two different things. John mentioned that that there was the possibility. So when you've got a club, it's not there for a group of people to take control of it, to be able to take control of it. And from what he's saying, and you're reading between the lines, there's 4 people at the moment that have sort of hijacked it. And that's not that difficult, probably, once they've got the power to sort of wield it, and that's kind of what they've done. So, I think I don't know what the question is, because I think the ownership structure definitely needs to be looked at. How it gets looked at, I think these 3 directors are going to take him to court anyway. So this has got a long way to play out. That's the problem for us. I would assume that the 4 people there weren't expecting a petition to go up. They obviously responded to the petition once the debenture holders were named. They've come out with a statement, and I know you're going to talk about that later. But I think it's interesting that there are people within the debenture system that think it's outdated, and that's a good thing. As a fan, you would want, as Rob said, for it to be spun out as a separate entity, but how does that happen? I think there are ways within HBG that the governance structure could be reworked just for the West Tigers, because don't forget, HBG own a number of assets. This is just one of them. So, you're talking about layers on layers on layers. We just have to deal with the position that we're in and trying to get some effective change from that. And I think the fact that the Gaming Commission is looking at it, I think that debenture holders are starting to talk about it. I think the fact that Holman Barnes reacted to the petition, and they know that there's going to be, lots of fans that are going to be unhappy with them. I think these are all positive things. I mean, obviously, we don't want it to play out in the media. We'd love it to go to bed tomorrow. And there's probably a couple of things that HBG can do to make that happen. I spoke to someone that was very close to the running of the external the recruitment company that did for the independent directors, who told me it was just a shit show. His words from the mouth of them. So, I think we're going to see who the independent directors are. Do they have any links to the current 4 people that are there at the moment? We're going to see. I don't know.
I think one point that John made that was really interesting and really timely, considering our petition is about a governance review of the Holman Barnes Group, is that in 2018, Clubs New South Wales, at the request of the Holman Barnes Group, did conduct a governance review into the Holman Barnes Group. And there were certain recommendations put in place around the debenture system about how they're appointed. One of those was that they have 5-year terms. So any new debenture holder who comes on now, instead of it being a debenture holder for life, it is a 5-year term, and then it gets replaced, and then that gets extended. So it's not that they've got to reapply, it's that there needs to be a reason for it not to be extended. But the really interesting one I found is there was a recommendation about how new debenture holders are appointed and who makes that decision. And that power was taken away from the Holman Barnes Group board. It wasn't taken away, it was a recommendation, and the Holman Barnes Group followed through with that recommendation, where they, instead of it used to be back around 2000 that the current debenture holders decided who it was. It then moved to a point where the debenture holders on the board made that decision. Now, that was changed in 2018 after the governance review, where they were getting an independent and the 2 general member elected directors to appoint the debenture holders, which I thought that really, some of that kind of debenture holders selecting people they know so they can maintain their power, that's an issue I have with the system that they currently have. So that was changed. And I thought that part was, when John told me about it, I thought that sounded like a much better system. But in the past 12 months, it's been reverted back. So the recommendations that Club New South Wales gave to the Holman Barnes Group that they accepted, they have now backtracked on, and it's now the debenture holders who are on the board and the independents who make those appointments for the next debenture holders to go on. And I know this is boring and it's convoluted, but it's a convoluted system. And the other thing I question about that, there's also a lot of appointments that the Holman Barnes Group have to make over the next 2 months. There's 2 debenture holder spots up for appointment right now, and there's also the independents for the West Tigers. And I find it really interesting that at the time where the appointments for the independent directors for the West Tigers are due to come up, that there's been changes in the directors at the Holman Barnes Group. Now, it very well could be a coincidence, but the 2 guys that supported the independent review, well, the 3 guys that supported the independent, the external review that Gary Barnier and Tony Crawford completed at the end of 2023, it's interesting that they're no longer, not only no longer on the board at the Holman Barnes Group, but no longer a member of the Holman Barnes Group, at a time where the Holman Barnes Group has to make the final decision about who those independents are.
That timing stink a little bit for you, Rob, or we wouldn't 2 and 2 together and getting 5?
I don't know if I'm getting 4 or 5, but a bit like Gary, I just think it's very convenient that the West Tigers are about to appoint some independent members and suddenly 3 blokes got kicked off the board. So is that a fact that, some of them would have put up a little bit of a fight against who the people chosen were going to be at West Tigers? So look, we can prognosticate and think what's going to happen and hypothesize, but I really don't know, guys. I just think we wouldn't be talking about this if 3 blokes didn't get suspended, and no one would be complaining about the debenture system if everything was going hunky-dory at the West Tigers. But the fact that, Barry O'Farrell's got to reapply for the job and stuff like that, there's a lot of stuff there that just doesn't make sense to me.
Yep. For me, none of this would be an issue if the recommendations from the Crawford Barney report were implemented in a timely manner, which I don't think they have been. It's been well over 12 months now. If we didn't have infighting at our majority owner at board level, I don't think we'd be talking about this. And if we didn't have a minor owner who keeps on getting into the news for stories about wanting to break away, whether they're true or not, we don't know. But all of this bad news on bad news on bad news, this negative press coming from our ownership groups, is the exact reason why the West Tigers needs a buffer and a level of independence from the ownership group. And that's what the Gary Barnia and Tony Crawford report recommended. And I think what we've seen over the past 2 months plays out exactly why they made those recommendations.
Adrian, we've seen comments from, Gary Leo and some of the Balmain side of it and leaking emails. And John mentioned that, it's a marriage of convenience, and some of the stuff he mentioned or that he's dealing with in some of these boardrooms that, orange is a dominant colour, and it's unfortunate that the media shorthand call the club the Tigers. Is that the sort of trivial stuff we're still dealing with 25 years in?
They're all pains in the arses, if you want the truth, all of them. They're annoy the shit out of me because you got these old people. I'm 42. I'm not that young, but these guys just have to get over it. It's so annoying that the club is being hijacked by an old mentality and a minority of people that just are living in the past, man, and they just need to get over it and get on with it. From my point of view, it's I think it's obviously an evolution. Hopefully I think Shane Richardson's been one of the best appointments the club's ever made. I'm sure he's gone through different ownership structures with Souths. I mean, if one person can deal with all this, it's definitely him. He's probably the best in the game. And so that gives me
ask you that. Sorry, Adrian, because you've had dealings with Justin Pascoe and Grant Mayo. I'm not going to ask you to go into your dealings with them, but I think Rob's said on record that, it's the best thing that's ever happened to the West Tigers getting Shane Richardson. I mean, it would be an absolute disaster if someone like that got the shits and said, I'm out of here.
That would be my biggest concern. I just think that you'd like to think that so as the boys have sort of said already, nobody would be talking about this if all the actions of the review had taken place. You would only hope that they are smart enough, these 4 people on the board of HBG at the moment, know that they can't sort of snap the elastic with someone like Shane Richardson who could just get up and walk away. I hope that the fact that he's got Jerome there and he talks to Galvin's parents and all this, that he's pretty sticky with the club and he wouldn't want to do the right thing. But 100%, he said that the only reason, if you listen to his podcast initially, I think he was talking to James Graham and he went on his podcast, he said, I didn't believe that they'd actually go ahead with the changes. He wanted the assurance before he came on board that they were going to move ahead with the recommendations of the report. That is the biggest concern, is you've got these idiots at HBG that honestly, actions speak louder than words. They could say whatever they want and you can get to the statement later on, but they haven't done what they said they're going to do. They've got rid of the people that wanted the review in the first place. All the reporting and everything you read is about these 4 people wanting to bring the Magpies back, not wanting the review to take place, not wanting to lose their control and ownership over the West Tigers. And, I mean, I wouldn't blame Shane, to be honest with you. I hope he's not listening because I don't want him to go anywhere. But I think it's still fairly storm in a teacup. We're going to see how it sort of evolves. But we'll see.
Yeah, that key recommendation that really had me worried not going ahead was the 12-month audit of the progress of the recommendations. That the fact that didn't go ahead, to me, indicates that if you're blocking that from happening, there's a reason you're blocking that from happening. What are you trying to hide by not allowing that audit to go ahead? And that's the concern I have, and that really raised a big flag for me. So you are about to move on the statement, I know, but they can put out all these statements about what they're going to do, but as Tripper just said, if that is not implemented, if we haven't seen the signs that that's progressing, then it doesn't matter what you say, because it's been 13 months just about now, and this should have been done within 6 to 8 months at a maximum.
Let's talk about the statements, boys. We'll focus mainly on the one on the 3rd of January. There was also one last night, so it's been a busy day for the printer at Holman Barnes over the weekend. But 15 facts, Rob. I don't know if you're an English soccer fan, but this reminded me of Rafa Benitez. He went on a famous rant in 2009 where he listed a whole heap of facts, and it was in relation to the great Alex Ferguson trying to get under his skin. And cut a long story short, Liverpool were top of the table, went on to implode throughout the rest of the season. So I just thought, is this a sign that the Holman Barnes group are getting their act together, or are they panicking, or are they on the defensive? 2 statements in 3 days.
Yeah, I'd say they're panicking and being defensive. Look, let's just stick to the primary reason that we've collaborated and we've started West Tigers Unite. I want to quote Holman Barnes here. Firstly, that statement that they put out, the fact, I wish I didn't use that word fact. The fact that they used the word fact before every statement, I thought was primary school-like. It was actually like someone from year 5 had written it.
It's like someone responding on Twitter.
It kind of is, but this is, I think one of the things they said there, which just absolutely buries them, is they said, and I quote, Holman Barnes Group believe that good governance is essential to running the West Tigers. Now, if that's what they say, then why has it taken so long to implement the recommendations? Okay, if they are doing good governance, why? Gary, did you want to go there?
Yeah, if you currently have half your board, well, 3 out of 7 seats vacant on your board because you've just dismissed 3 of your directors. Now, no matter what side of that you sit on, that's not good governance. There's an issue with the governance in your organisation, whether it's the people have been suspended for or sacked for the right reasons. There was an issue in your governance in what was going on to get them sacked. If you sack them for the wrong reason, there's an issue in your governance. So to say that they want good governance, they need to look in their own backyard, and the Holman Barnes Group at the moment is not displaying good governance.
But when they say that, Gary, like when you can see that's a blatant mistruth, then how can you take them at their word, to use John Hardgrove's comment, on anything else? Because we know that's not a fact. That's an absolute lie. Okay, so I just think we've got them on the back foot. They came out with one statement. They came out with another one yesterday. And personally, I mean, everyone can make up their own mind. I don't believe a word they say, and I don't trust them. I absolutely don't trust them. And again, I really don't care what Holman Barnes Group do as long as it doesn't affect the West Tigers. But unfortunately, it does affect the West Tigers.
Adrian, I'll just paraphrase a few of the points that they did put forward in their initial press release on the 3rd of January. Fact 1, they said they're absolutely unequivocally committed to the joint venture. Number 2, we stand by the recommendations of the review. Number 3 said there was concerns raised over the review process. Fact 5, the review recommendations have been largely implemented. And point 6 says review of 2023 recommends 4 independent directors, which process over 12 months later is nearing completion. And to summarise, they went on to say the debenture system's been great for members for 69, served us well for 69 years, and there's a rigorous screening process. However, the board is dismayed with the recent leaking of past papers. This whole statement for you, did it concern you? Did it encourage you, or somewhere in between, or not?
No, I spoke to Rob the day before that came out, and the debenture holder names got into the paper. That they would respond like this. I knew they were going to respond like this. This is just self-interest. If I was a debenture holder and I'd been private for God knows how long, and all of a sudden I've got 30,000 West Tigers fans knowing my name, I don't think they thought that it would escalate to the level that it has. And this is just them trying to save face. It kind of, one of our objectives was we wanted them to state their position and put them in a position where they had to support everything, like the review and the recommendations, which they did. But that's such broad language. Do you know what I mean? You could say that you support it, but they've taken 12 months to do it. So I think it doesn't surprise me what they've done. I think it's good. It helps us because at the end of the day, it's very hard for them now not to adopt the recommendations, the recommendations of the review. But again, when people have control like they do, they can still meddle with it. They can still appoint the people that they want. They can still take as long as they want to do things. They can still do things behind the scenes. So I think we need to keep putting the pressure on them, until we get sort of a satisfactory level of action and meaning, and to see that 4 people are not going to control our football club. At the moment, 4 people control the football club. I mean, how does that work? So, and the fact that they suspended these guys for 8 years, like even John said, like, it's super excessive. Again, I think that they did it not knowing that there was going to be this backlash. I don't think they knew, thinking that there was going to be a petition that went up. And I've been around politics and I've seen politicians, and the only way politicians ever do anything, they can tell you what they want. I'm sure we've all been there. They've smiled. They said they're going to do this, walk out of the room, and then they take another call. They make another promise. The only time they ever do anything is when they think their job's at stake. That's it. So we need to keep the pressure on for these guys to feel like their jobs are at stake and that real change is afoot. And I think that's the only way we're actually going to get it done meaningfully.
You mentioned there, Adrian, about the language used, and that for me is fairly key. We've heard language when the Holman Barnes Group has spoken about the review in the past 2 months and the recommendations, and it was be true to the review, and now we get stand by the review. We're at a point now where I need much more explicit language than that. I don't need to hear that we're going to be true to the review or we're going to stand by the review. I want to hear we're going to implement the recommendations in full and they will be completed by, and that would give me a lot more confidence. Having it saying we will stand by the review isn't enough for me, because you can stand by the review and implement 8 out of the 10 recommendations, but leave the 2 key ones out. Like, to me, that language needed to be much more explicit. I think the fan base is asking for much more explicit language than that. And I would feel a lot better about what they put out if they were more explicit in their language, because when you're not explicit in your language, it gives people the feeling that you're not fully committed to what you're saying. When you have wiggle room in what you're said, people don't buy into what you're said, and that's the issue for me with the statement that they put out last week.
So I just want to go further on what you're saying there too, Gary. Like, they're not being explicit in their language. As usual, we don't even have a name at the end of the Holman Barnes Group statement. Who's that statement from? Is it from one particular board member? Is it from the chairman? Is it from the CEO? Like, it's almost now that we almost need individual statements from every director that's left there so that we know that they're all on the same page. Because if we go back and refer to this in 6 months from now, who put out that statement? Who's actually behind it? Like, surely you put a name behind it.
But it just means nothing, because at the end of the day, from what I heard from Rick Wade's interview with you, him and Tony were the ones that really fought for Shane Richardson, I think that's right, to come on as CEO, and were pushing for it. You know, I think 99.9% of West Tigers fans are happy with Shane Richardson and the direction that the club is going in.
Very happy.
Why would you sack the 3 directors that were all for the recommendations, all for the review, implemented all the changes? We're only here today because of those 3 guys, right? Basically, you sack those 3 guys and then you put out a statement and expect us to believe it. Like, we're not idiots, you know, like, it just doesn't. And you can say, oh, they swore at a board meeting and they did this. What a load of bulldust. Come on, man. So I'd like to see Julie come out. I'd actually like to see individual statements from the 4 people, and I'd like to see Julie pop her head up and say something like a statement to say we're implementing the full review, as Gary said, make some assurances, put a name to something, put some personal declarations out there that actually we know, well, then they can't sort of wiggle out of, because otherwise you can't believe anything they say. You just can't.
Well, and it's something that's been, since Julie got the chairmanship, I think we spoke about it on a pod at the time, that there was rumours around at that time that all that change in leadership, the Holman Barnes Group, was an attempt to step back from the review. we made comments on our podcast at the time that Julie could put it all to bed really quickly by coming out and stating that they're following through with all the recommendations. Now that hasn't happened. Not only has that not happened, you don't see Julie's name mentioned in press releases, really in comments about the issue at all. It's almost like at times she's hiding, and there was a part of her complaint that she, in her emails, she was talking about not being interviewed in the review process. Now, she was offered a chance to be interviewed for the review process. She didn't put herself forward to be interviewed. She didn't make the time. She didn't put the importance enough in the review that was happening in 2023 to be a part of it. And
Go, Adrian.
Sorry, the fact that they asked Barry O'Farrell to reapply for the position is so disrespectful. If he's doing a good job, like the chairman is a very revered position. I worked on a board. We had Ashok Jacob, who's one of the prominent financiers in Australia. If anyone had asked, I would even shudder to think of what would happen if someone had said, "Hey, do you mind reapplying?" It's like you just wouldn't ever get a call back. You would never hear from that person again. It's so disrespectful. So two things: either they did it intentionally to sort of annoy him and piss him off so that he would leave, because you would only do it intentionally in that case, or two, you are that incompetent and cannot read the room at all or have any board EQ that you would ask someone to reapply and not think that it was disrespectful. So good on Barry for sticking around, but to say, hey, tip your hat in the ring. As I said, if you're doing a good job, you stick around. You don't get asked to reapply, and that just shows either their intention to be maligned or their unintentionality, which is complete amateur hour. I don't know which one it is.
Rob, we'll just about wrap it up on this statement, but John Hargrove did say to Gary, and I thought it was an interesting choice of words, at face value, it's great to read that the Holman Barnes Group is fully committed to the West Tigers, but, is there still too much to read between the lines?
Definitely is. As I said earlier, John seems like an absolute gentleman. He wanted to keep his cards close to his chest, and I think that was the politest way possible of him saying, I really don't believe it, or, people can make their own minds up, because he doesn't, I'm sure he doesn't buy it. That's how I read it. I'm not sure how Gary and Tripper and yourselves read it, but look, if I wish he was a bit more like me and a bit more gung-ho and rip the lid off, but he's too much of a nice guy to do that, and I respect that. And it's, he's got his sister-in-law involved and other people he's been working with for many a year. So but that was the politest way possible. I mean, look, if you take out the politeness, he's quite damning of the whole thing. He's damning of the debenture system. He's damning of what's happened to the three directors that have been suspended. He's actually even to the point where he says they probably shouldn't have even been suspended at all. So he's just said it all in a really polite way. So, yeah, reading between the lines, I don't think he's on par with it at all. And let's again say this, I don't think he would have come out publicly if he wasn't so dead set against what they're doing. So I think it's pretty obvious you can put two and two together and come up with four.
I thought the one-word answers, Gary, were quite poignant. Maybe a bit of frustration behind that. In support of the Crawford Barney recommendations, he was just, yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, it's obvious that he wants those recommendations in full. Didn't even elaborate on reasons for it. It was just yes. So I thought that was very, very telling. It's obvious that he sees the need for West Tigers to have separation from the Holman Barnes Group and the other ownership groups, and that he no longer believes that the debenture system is best for the Holman Barnes Group or best for the West Tigers.
Let's look at this just briefly, statement last night. I know Adrian hasn't seen it, so I'll probably just stick with you, Rob and Gary. But last night, Holman Barnes released a statement outlining the disciplinary process about the three suspended board members. They started off with, we had to maintain confidentiality and integrity, and that's why we stayed silent. I'm paraphrasing here. They said they received a considerable amount of complaints about the three suspended directors. The majority were made from whistleblower channels. I don't know exactly what that means, but I'm sure somebody does. So appointed an external investigator. They then listed all the points of what the three directors were found guilty of. And they were saying this is not trivial. It's been a fair and thorough process. And please be respectful, the members. They asked for it at the end. I don't know what that meant either. But Rob, any reaction to that?
Look, I obviously I've spoken to Tony Andriakou and Rick Wade and got a little bit more detail privately as to the allegations and what's gone on. Whatever you think of the allegations, and look, I've got to be clear, I'm not on Tony and Rick's side. I'm on the West Tigers side. And if Tony and Rick did the same the other way around for the wrong reasons, I'd be on Julie Romero and Dennis Burgess' side and the other blokes, Trippiano and Montgomery and what have you.
Any general reaction, Gary, to the statement put out last night about the three suspended board members?
I don't know what happened. I don't think anyone knows what happened outside the people involved. And it's not so much about sticking up for Rick Wade and Tony Andriakou and Dave Gilbert. I don't know these guys. I've met Rick Wade a couple of times when I've been at West Ashfield, but I don't know these guys at all. And in my mind, for a big part of the last 10 years, they've been a massive part of the problem at our club. They've been a massive part of the problem for the West Tigers. So for me, it's not about these guys getting themselves back on the board. This, to me, is just a symptom of the poor governance in our ownership group. The fact that, and I said it earlier, the fact that our majority owner has just wiped out almost half their board, that's a big issue for me. And if this was a one-off sort of situation, but these sort of things are happening all the time. We had just over 18 months ago, the West Magpies chairman removed for arguments he was having with the West Tigers CEO and the West Tigers chairman in Justin Pascoe and Lee Hadjivantalis. Now, I think a lot of us kind of agreed with him at the time about the problems he was having with those people. But that's less than 2 years ago. The chairman of one of the other owners was removed. Now, he's also made allegations that Balmain don't hold annual general meetings and that ownership level and the governance around our ownership level is just constantly a mess. And it's not just the Holland Barnes group. It's the Magpies, it's the Balmain Tigers as well. The reason why the Holland Barnes group is such a focus is they're the majority owner who can fix this mess. Putting in a governance review into the Balmain Tigers does not fix this mess for the West Tigers. Putting in a governance review into the West Magpies does not fix this mess for the West Tigers. The way we fix this mess is by fixing up the majority owner of the West Tigers.
Rob?
Yeah, I was just going to, hopefully Tripper's having a little read of it, so I'd like to hear you
I can
as
say.
well.
Yeah.
Just apologies on that before. Someone came in the room, it absolutely threw my train of thought. But look, if these allegations are so serious, and some of them dated back to 2020, then wouldn't good governance act on that first allegation in 2020? And perhaps you get a warning or get a suspension or whatever the case may be. Why are we dragging up a culmination of 4 to 5 years worth of allegations and then putting it in one basket and then conveniently suspending 3 directors shortly before we're about to appoint some independent members for the West Tigers? That really concerns me. Tripper?
Just getting back to your question, which was, what do we think of the statement? I think that it's all in self-preservation. I think they are just trying to cover themselves because if you look at what John said yesterday, regardless of what they did, he thought that the penalties were excessive. And so this is them trying to cover their ass legally, I think. So they know that the three directors are going to go to them legally for the charges. They have to defend it. They've put it out there in the public spotlight to sort of quell this. It's a PR statement, a stunt, but it's also for legal reasons. And also, when you look at it, when the Liquor and Gaming Commission is looking at it, they're going to see whether 4 people have control, and a part of it is going to be the fact that they remove these people for an 8-year term. So this, for me, is just purely a defensive position put out by them. To from a legal perspective, to say that they've done the right thing and they're well within their rights to give these 8-year penalties, because they're scared, because of, they're scared of it getting overturned. They're scared of the Tigers fans now sort of ganging up on them. I feel like they kind of pushed the barrel a little bit too far, and now it's sort of tipped over the edge, and they probably weren't expecting it. And so now they're sort of in damage control, and this is just part of damage control.
Right. Mike, come around and just ask the boys for any final thoughts in ending. But Gary, the 3 independent directors of Holman's Barnes Group did mention on that January 3 press release that's nearing completion, and that's exciting, they said. But is it a case of a bit of trepidation there that some of those members might not have the right skills matrix if the current leadership doesn't change, or there's a...
Look, I think we'll be able to tell quite quickly once people are announced. So it's fairly easy to find out people's backgrounds nowadays. I think we'll be able to get a bit more of an idea how truly independent they are. And what's really important for me, it's not so much how independent they are, it's how experienced they are. It's the skill sets they bring to our board. I spoke a couple of, I don't know if it was on one of these pods for the West Tigers Unite or it was on our pod, but it's really important for me that we get a range of skills onto that board, because we need a range of skills. We need someone who can engage with the government, which we've got in Barry O'Farrell. We need someone who can engage with the media organisations. We need someone who can engage in the football. We need someone who can engage in the corporate world and draw sponsors and use connections and networking to bring our club forward. And they're the skills we need on our board. We don't need a board that their experience is running a leagues club. We need much more than that. A modern professional sporting organisation needs much more than that. And I think it'll be fairly easy to tell quite quickly whether the people who are appointed have those skills.
Any final thoughts, Rob, before we wrap it up?
I think, look, I don't know if everyone has looked at the West Tigers Unite page and seen our latest press release that Joel Helms put together with the help of everyone on Saturday. But most importantly, we want a timeline for the recommendations of the Barnier Crawford report. Yeah. When are they going to happen? Like, that's the number one thing. But we've got a whole heap of other questions. I don't know if you've got them handy, Eddie. Like, I don't want to throw you under the bus, but I'll just chat away while we say that. But there was like about 8 or 9 points or questions that we want Holman Barnes Group to answer, and they're not like rude questions. I think they're just pretty to the point questions that need to be answered if they want to look good and they want to appease what we're trying to achieve. And if they answer those questions and we're happy with it, we'll back off. Like, we're not here because of the 3 directors or anything. We're just sick of the dramas. We're sick of seeing, as Tripper said when you asked him about 2025, like, we've got so much stuff to look forward to on the footy field. And I know, some of us have got more of a reputation of, going at CEOs and chairmen and what have you and having spats. But my passion for podcasting is talking about the team and how the games are and dissecting the games and what we did right, what we did wrong, the coaching, the tactics, all that sort of stuff. Unfortunately, the last few years, it's been predominantly losing. I'm hoping that's going to change this year, but I'm just looking forward to talking about some good things. And I know we're going to get packed houses because we got packed houses last year and we came last. So I don't think we're going to have many stadiums other than Parramatta Stadium that'll hold our crowds once we start winning. So there's plenty of positives to look forward to. But again, if we want to keep players at the club, we want to attract players at the club, we need those people and player managers and parents of the players, they need to be able to see that the ownership is steady and it's solid and it's a good place to be at. And right now, Holman Barnes Group, they're not doing Keith Holman's name any good, and they're certainly not doing Keith Barnes' name any good. They can, maybe we should refer to them as West Ashfield until they get their heads together.
Yeah, for me, Rob, I have to agree with that 100%. I don't want to talk about this stuff. I hate talking about this stuff. This whole thing brings stress to my life. I feel sick in the stomach over this action at times because I hate this stuff. I want to be talking about the football. I love talking about football. I know more about football than anyone, and I love giving that opinion. This stuff bores me, and I don't want to talk about it anymore, but it's really important right now. Our club is on the up.
Yeah, it's short-term pain for long-term gain. That's why we're doing it.
And our club is on the up due to the changes, the recommendations that have already been implemented. We're not on the up because the Holman Barnes Group has suddenly turned around. We're on the up because of the changes that were recommended from the Crawford Barney report that have already been implemented.
Adrian,
we need to get the rest of them implemented so that we continue to grow, because we're not quite there yet. We need the rest of the changes.
I'll finish with you, Adrian. Gary mentioned we're on the up, but it can go either way, can't it? It just feels like it's a really critical juncture, and the next month or two could determine, the next 10 or 15 years of West Tigers and whether we do become that sleeping giant powerhouse that we could be, or whether we, muddle around like we have for the last 13 years.
Yeah. I think that the 4 people there on the board, now that there's a little bit of heat applied, I think that things will go pretty smoothly, in my opinion. I think there might be the court action from the other 3, and it depends what the liquor and gaming thing, but I think they're going to really be trying to cover their backsides now as much as possible, again, because they don't want to lose their jobs. So if we've done our job in terms of providing a little bit of heat so that it goes a bit smoother now, then, we're going to find out.
All right, boys. Well, thanks for your time tonight. I know we'd all love to be talking footy, but that's about a month away. And Gary, where's the best place if you want to sign the petition?
I think if you go and check out the West Tigers Unite Facebook page, it has not only the petition there, it has any press releases we've put out, any articles related to it, links to the podcasts we've done. I think that's probably the best place to get all your information around this. So, just West Tigers Unite on Facebook.
All right. Thanks for your time, boys.
Yeah.
Thanks, Eddie.
Thanks, boys.